Life, in its mysterious unfolding, places us in the lives of others not by accident, but by divine orchestration. You may wonder why you crossed paths with a narcissist, why your heart was drawn into their world only to face confusion, pain, and perhaps even betrayal. But consider this: what if you were meant to be there? What if, in the grand design of existence, you were sent not to suffer, but to serve a purpose? Every relationship is a mirror, reflecting back to us something essential. The narcissist was a teacher in disguise, revealing both your deepest wounds and your greatest strengths. And, whether they changed because of you or remained the same, your role was never about them. It was about something far greater. You were placed in their life for a reason, and whether you realize it or not, you have already succeeded. Every relationship is a mirror, reflecting back to us something essential. The narcissist was a teacher in disguise, revealing both your deepest wounds and your greatest strengths. And whether they changed because of you or remained the same, your role was never about them. It was about something far greater. You were placed in their life for a reason, and whether you realize it or not, you have already succeeded. The nature of existence is much like a cosmic dance, a grand interplay of forces. Some light, some dark, some appearing to wound, and others to heal. For here's the secret: the wound and the healing are not separate. The pain you endured was not random. It was the fire through which something greater was forged. Think about it. Without pressure, the diamond is never formed. Without the storm, the tree's roots never grow deep. And without friction, the soul never awakens. We often think that suffering at the hands of another means we were weak, that we were foolish, that we were somehow unworthy of love. But have you ever considered that your endurance, your kindness, and your love were precisely why you were there? The narcissist, lost in their illusion of self-importance, desperately needed a reflection of something real, and you, in all your sincerity, were that reflection. Whether they saw it or not does not matter, because light does not need permission to shine. You were not a failure because you couldn't fix them. You were not foolish because you loved them. You were a divine presence in their life, sent not necessarily to change them, but to offer them a glimpse of something beyond themselves. Perhaps they rejected it, perhaps they mistook your love for weakness, perhaps they continued in their ways, blind to what was given. That is not your burden to carry. The sun does not stop shining simply because some choose to live in darkness. But what of the pain you endured? What of the moments when you doubted yourself, when you felt depleted, unworthy, or trapped? That too was part of the process. Pain is never without purpose. It carves you into someone deeper, someone who understands things not from mere words but from experience. It strips away the illusions of control and forces you to surrender to something greater. In the end, the struggle was not a prison, it was a passage. And now, here you are, standing on the other side. Maybe you carry scars, maybe you still feel the weight of it all, but look at yourself. You have become someone who knows love at a depth that the narcissist may never comprehend. You have walked through fire and emerged wiser. You have learned that real strength is not in closing yourself off, but in continuing to love, in choosing not to become bitter, in rising even when the world tried to break you. So was your time with them wasted? Not at all. You were the lesson they may never admit to learning. You were the light they may never acknowledge seeing. You were the whisper of God in their life, whether they heard it or not, and you, through it all, have become more of who you were meant to be. The experience does not define you, it refines you. You were never lost in the storm, you were being shaped by it, and now, as you step forward, you carry with you a truth that cannot be undone. You were placed there for a reason, and in that reason you have already succeeded. The narcissist was a mirror, but not in the way you might think. They were not a reflection of who you are, but rather a distorted image meant to show you what you are not. And that, in itself, was a lesson. Too often we see pain as punishment, as something unjust, when in truth it is often the fire through which we are purified. God did not place you in the narcissist's life to suffer endlessly, nor to be broken beyond repair. You were there because something within you, something strong, something unshakable, was meant to shine in their darkness. You were there because your presence alone was enough to challenge the illusions they had wrapped themselves in. A narcissist lives in a world of control, a fortress built of vanity and self-importance, where love is a tool and people are pieces in their game. But then you arrived, and what did you do? You loved them. You gave them patience, understanding, kindness, the very things they struggle to understand, let alone reciprocate. You did not speak their language of manipulation and self-interest. You were something foreign to them, something unsettling. And whether they admitted it or not, you forced them to confront something real. That was never easy. You may have felt drained, confused, wondering why your love was not enough to change them. But love is not about changing another person. It is about offering truth. Whether they accepted that truth or rejected it was never your responsibility. The fact that you gave it at all means you fulfilled your purpose. You were successful in your role because your existence disrupted the illusion they were trying so hard to maintain. And in the process, you learned something too. You learned that love is not about losing yourself in another person. You learned that being kind does not mean being a martyr. You learned that your worth is not determined by whether someone else sees it. The narcissist may have tried to convince you otherwise, but look at where you stand now. You have walked through that fire, and instead of being consumed by it, you have emerged with a deeper understanding of who you are. Perhaps the most painful part of it all was the realization that they would never truly see you. You wanted them to wake up, to recognize your love, to change, and yet, despite everything, they continued in their patterns. But here is a truth many people do not understand. Your success was never about their transformation. It was never about their recognition of your worth. It was about the simple fact that you loved, that you remained true to yourself, that you did not let their brokenness break you. God's plan does not always make sense in the moment. You may have questioned why you had to endure so much, why you had to be the one who suffered. But what if your presence in their life was not just for them, but also for you? What if, through the struggle, you were being refined into someone who could no longer be fooled by empty words, someone who no longer seeks validation from those incapable of giving it? What if, instead of weakening you, this experience was strengthening you for something far greater? You were not there to be consumed by their darkness. You were there to shine despite it. And now, as you move forward, you take with you a wisdom that cannot be taken away. You have seen what love is not, and in doing so you have come to understand what love truly is. You have seen the depths of manipulation, and in doing so you have learned to trust yourself more deeply. You have faced the storm and discovered that you were never powerless. You were always growing, always evolving, always being shaped by something far greater than you realized. So do not carry regret. Do not wonder if you wasted your time. You were there for a reason, and whether the narcissist realizes it or not, your presence made an impact. And now, as you step into the next chapter of your life, you do so with a heart that is stronger, a spirit that is wiser, and a soul that understands its own worth. That is success. That is freedom. That is God's plan unfolding exactly as it was meant to. Spiritual alchemy is the process by which suffering is transformed into wisdom, pain into strength, and loss into clarity. What you endured in the presence of the narcissist was not without meaning. It was not wasted time, nor was it a mistake. It was a necessary step in your evolution, a sacred unfolding that, though difficult, was always leading you toward something greater. In the moment, it may have felt like endless confusion, like a cycle of giving without receiving, of hoping without fulfillment. But now, as you begin to see with new eyes, you understand. You were never losing yourself. You were finding yourself in the deepest way possible. The narcissist could never truly appreciate the depth of what you offered, not because you were unworthy, but because they lacked the capacity to receive it. They were trapped in their own illusion, playing a game of control, admiration, and self-preservation. And yet, even within their walls of self-importance, something about you disturbed them. Your kindness, your presence, your ability to love without conditions. It was foreign to them. They could not understand it, and in many ways they feared it. You represented something that challenged their carefully crafted world, a light that made it impossible for them to ignore the shadows. But you must understand, their failure to love you the way you deserved was never a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of their inability. Too often people assume that if someone does not love them properly, it means they were not enough. But love is not about being enough for someone else. Love is about resonance, about two souls meeting in a space where both can give and receive. The narcissist was never capable of this, and yet you stayed, not out of weakness, but because your heart is one that loves deeply, that believes in redemption, that sees beyond the surface. And that is why you were placed in their life. Not to fix them, not to lose yourself in their chaos, but to be a presence they would never forget. You were a seed of something real, something they may never fully grasp, but something that will linger in the background of their consciousness long after you are gone. Whether they change or not is not your concern. Know your conscience. It is your conscience, and my conscience is not your conscience. Your conscience is as your conscience, but it is not your concern. You were successful simply by being yourself, by standing in your truth, by offering something that could never be faked or manipulated. Yet through this journey, the person who was truly transformed was you. You learned boundaries, not as walls of isolation, but as sacred spaces that protect your energy. You learned that love is not about sacrificing yourself, but about recognizing when someone is incapable of meeting you where you stand. You learned that walking away is not defeat, it is an act of self-respect. And perhaps, most importantly, you learned that the love you gave so freely to someone who could not receive it was never in vain. Because love, when it is real, does not disappear. It returns to you in new ways, in new people, in new blessings that you could not have imagined. It was never wasted. It was simply misplaced. But now you know better. Now you see the truth. Now you are free. God did not place you in their life to be broken. He placed you there to be awakened. And now, as you move forward, you do so not as a victim, not as someone who was used or discarded, but as someone who has been refined, strengthened, and made whole. You are no longer waiting for them to see your worth, because you have already found it within yourself. And that, beyond any doubt, is what true success looks like. Yet, through this journey, the person who was truly transformed was you. You learn boundaries, not as walls of isolation, but as sacred spaces that protect your energy. You learned that love is not about sacrificing yourself, but about recognizing when someone is incapable of meeting you where you stand. You learn that walking away is not defeat. It is an act of self-respect. And perhaps, most importantly, you learned that the love you gave so freely to someone who could not receive it was never in vain. Because love, when it is real, does not disappear. It returns to you in new ways, in new people, in new blessings that you could not have imagined. It was never wasted. It was simply misplaced. But now you know better. Now you see the truth. Now you are free. God did not place you in their life to be broken. He placed you there to be awakened. And now, as you move forward, you do so not as a victim, not as someone who is used or discarded, but as someone who has been refined, strengthened, and made whole. You are no longer waiting for them to see your worth because you have already found it within yourself, and that, beyond any doubt, is what true success looks like. Freedom does not come from being loved by those who are incapable of love. It comes from realizing that your worth was never tied to their ability to see it. The narcissist may have convinced you, in subtle and insidious ways, that you were not enough, that your love was too much or too little, that you were too sensitive or not understanding enough, that somehow you were always falling short. And for a time, you may have believed them. You may have twisted yourself into impossible shapes, trying to fit into the mold of what they wanted, hoping that if you could just love them right, they would change. But that was never your task. You were placed in their life not to become what they wanted, but to reveal what they were missing. Whether they saw it or not does not matter. That was never the measure of your success. You were a presence they could not fully grasp, a love they could not truly receive, a mirror reflecting back to them both what they longed for and what they feared the most. And that is why the experience was so painful, because they could not meet you in the space of truth, and you could not shrink yourself to fit their illusion. The tension between those two realities was inevitable. But what if this was never about them? What if this was always about you? You see, suffering is not a punishment. It is a teacher, a sculptor shaping you into something more refined, more aware, more whole. And in this case, the narcissist was the chisel. Every lie they told you chipped away at the false beliefs you carried about yourself. Every manipulation, every disappointment, every betrayal, they all forced you to confront what you truly deserved. You could have stayed, you could have continued the cycle, hoping, waiting, losing yourself piece by piece. But you didn't. Even if it took time, even if it was messy, even if you had to crawl your way out, you chose yourself. And that is why you were successful. Because in the end, it was never about making them see your worth. It was about you seeing it for yourself. It was about breaking the spell, the illusion that your value depended on someone else's recognition of it. It was about realizing that love, real love, does not require you to prove yourself, to perform, to earn what should be freely given. So if you ever wonder why this happened, why God placed you in the life of someone who could not love you the way you deserved, understand this. You were never meant to stay there forever. You were meant to wake up. You were meant to learn. You were meant to walk away with a deeper understanding of yourself, with wisdom you could not have gained any other way. And now as you step forward, you do so with clarity. You do so with strength that can no longer be shaken by the empty promises of someone who only knows how to take. You do so with a heart that is no longer willing to settle for half love, for manipulation disguised as care, for cycles that drain rather than nourish. You are no longer who you were when this journey began. You have transformed, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. The narcissist will go on, perhaps unchanged, perhaps searching for the next person to pull into their orbit. But that is no longer your concern. You are free now, free to love without fear, free to choose what aligns with your soul, free to walk in the fullness of who you are. That is the victory. That is the gift. That is why, no matter how it may have felt in the moment, you were always destined to succeed. The greatest liberation is understanding that you were never truly trapped. It only felt that way because, for a time, you believed the narcissist's version of reality. You believed their words when they said you were too much or not enough, that love was something to be earned, that their approval was the measure of your worth. But none of that was ever true. It was only a story they needed you to believe so they could maintain their illusion of control. The moment you saw through it, the moment you recognized that their love was not love but possession, you began to wake up. And in waking up, you reclaimed something they never wanted you to find: yourself. Perhaps you struggled with leaving. Perhaps you wrestled with guilt, with the feeling that walking away meant you were giving up, that you had failed in some way. But consider this. What if leaving was never failure? What if instead it was the moment you stepped fully into your power, The narcissist wanted you to believe that they were the center of your world, that your existence was somehow tied to their approval. But when you chose yourself, when you finally said, "Enough," you shattered that illusion. You proved, perhaps to them, but more importantly to yourself, that their grip on you was never as strong as it seemed. God never intended for you to remain in a place where you were not valued. The lesson was not about endurance for the sake of suffering. It was about learning to discern what love is and what it is not. It was about recognizing that real love does not manipulate, does not demand that you shrink, does not thrive on power plays and silent punishments. The narcissist's love was never love. It was need, dependency, a hunger to be fed at the expense of your well-being. And yet, even in the midst of that, you continued to shine, you continued to give, you continued to love in a way that was real. That is not weakness. That is strength beyond measure. But even the strongest must learn when to let go. Even the most loving must realize that some people are not ready to receive what they have to give. That is the lesson you carry forward. Not that you were unworthy, but that you were offering light to someone who was unwilling or unable to see, and that is not your burden to bear. Your purpose was never to save them, never to fix them, never to make them whole. Your purpose was simply to be a presence in their life, and in doing so you fulfilled your role. And now you stand on the other side of that experience, no longer waiting for them to change, no longer searching for answers in their chaos. You have found your own clarity. You have learned that love is not about convincing someone to choose you, but about knowing that the right people will never need convincing. You've seen what happens when you pour yourself into someone who can only take, and you've learned that real love, healthy love, is reciprocal. Perhaps they will never understand what they lost. Perhaps they will never see the depth of what you offered. But that is not your concern. What matters is that you see it, that you recognize your own value, that you step forward with the knowledge that you were never lacking, you were always whole, always worthy, always enough. So do not mourn what was never truly love. Do not hold on to the hope that one day they will wake up and realize your worth. Instead, rejoice in the fact that you have awakened. You have seen the truth, and the truth has set you free. And in that freedom, you walk forward, not as someone who was broken, but as someone who has been refined. Someone who knows their worth, who understands their strength, who will never again settle for anything less than the love they truly deserve. Have you ever felt like you're carrying the weight of the world, pushing forward yet growing weary with every step? You pray, you wait, and yet the answers seem distant, almost as if the heavens are silent. But let me tell you something profound. God sees your struggle. He knows you're tired. And more than that, He hears the silent cries of your heart. Like the ocean knows the waves that rise and fall, God knows you intimately, your pain, your longing, your hope. You are not alone in this. The struggle is not a punishment, but a passage. It is not a wall, but a doorway leading you somewhere greater. But to walk through, you must first understand. God is not just watching from above. He is within, moving with you, waiting for you to surrender and trust the unfolding of His divine plan. Have you ever felt like you're carrying the weight of the world, pushing forward, yet growing weary with every step? You pray, you wait, and yet the answers seem distant, almost as if the heavens are silent. But let me tell you something profound. God sees your struggle. He knows you're tired, and more than that, He hears the silent cries of your heart. Like the ocean knows the waves that rise and fall, God knows you intimately. Your pain, your longing, your hope. You are not alone in this. The struggle is not a punishment, but a passage. It is not a wall, but a doorway, leading you somewhere greater. But to walk through, you must first understand. God is not just watching from above. He is within, moving with you, waiting for you to surrender and trust the unfolding of His divine plan. The world tells you that exhaustion is failure, that feeling tired means you are losing. But in truth, even weariness serves a purpose. It is the signal of the soul, a moment where your strength meets the edge of something greater. Even Jesus, in his most human moments, felt the weight of exhaustion in the wilderness, in the garden, on the cross. He knew the limits of the body, the strain of the heart, and yet through it all he did not break. Instead, he leaned deeper into God. And that is where true strength is found, not in forcing your way forward, but in allowing yourself to rest in divine trust. We often believe that if we do more, try harder, or push past our pain, we will finally reach the peace we are searching for. But what if the peace you seek is not in the striving, but in the letting go? What if God is not waiting for you to force your way through, but to release the burden you were never meant to carry alone? This is the great paradox. The moment you surrender is the moment you find freedom. Surrender is the moment you find freedom. The moment you stop grasping is the moment you receive. God does not simply listen to the words of your prayers. He listens to the language of your heart. Every sigh, every unspoken longing, every tear that falls in silence, he hears it all. And even when you feel abandoned, even when you feel unseen, he is nearer than the very breath within you. The soul does not need to scream to be heard by God. He understands the quietest ache, the smallest whisper. So what do you do when you are tired? You stop resisting the flow. You stop believing that struggle means separation from God. Instead, you allow yourself to be held. You realize that even in the moments when you feel like you are sinking, you are still within the ocean of His grace. Your exhaustion is not the end of you. It is simply the body's way of telling you to rest, the soul's way of calling you home. Let go of the fear that tells you things will never change. The season you are in is not forever. Just as the tide recedes and returns, just as the night gives way to morning, your struggle is not endless. There is a plan moving through your life, a purpose that unfolds even when you cannot see it. But to witness it, you must allow yourself to trust. This is the invitation, to stop fighting the current and instead let it carry you. To stop questioning whether God sees you and start realizing that He has never once taken His eyes off you. The exhaustion you feel is not your final state. It is merely the place where you are being invited to surrender, to breathe, and to rest in the presence of the One who has been holding you all along. Being tired is not a sign of weakness, but of movement. It means you have been striving, growing, enduring. There is a strange kind of wisdom hidden in exhaustion, a lesson that cannot be learned when everything is easy and effortless. The soul, much like the body, grows through resistance. Muscles are strengthened by tension, and faith is deepened by trials. The weight you carry now is shaping you in ways you cannot yet see, forging something within you that is unbreakable. And yet, in the midst of the struggle, it is easy to believe that you are alone, that perhaps your prayers have gone unheard, that your efforts are unseen. But have you ever considered that silence does not mean absence? That just as a teacher is quiet during a test, God may be still, not because He has left you, but because He trusts you. He knows what is being formed in you, even when you feel like you are unraveling. There is a patience in divine love, a knowing that there is a time for everything, a time to move and a time to rest, a time to fight and a time to surrender. When a seed is buried in the soil, it does not see the sun. It feels the weight of the earth pressing down on it, the darkness surrounding it, the struggle to break through. But what it does not realize is that in this very struggle, it is growing. The same pressure that feels like a burden is the very thing that strengthens its roots. And in time, when it is ready, it will break through the surface and reach toward the light. This is the way of all things. This is the way of faith. The struggle you are in now is not wasted. It is not meaningless. It is preparing you, stretching you, teaching you how to trust. You may not see it yet, but something is being formed in you. something resilient, something eternal. Something is being formed in you. 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 And in your exhaustion, in your moments of deepest weariness, God is not asking you to fight harder. He is asking you to let go, to stop trying to carry everything alone, to stop believing that you must earn rest, that you must prove your worth. You are already held. You are already loved. There is a kind of peace that can only be found in surrender, not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of trust. The moment you stop resisting, the moment you stop striving to control what was never meant to be controlled, you begin to realize that God has been carrying you all along. The river does not fight to reach the ocean, it simply flows. The birds do not struggle to find the wind, they simply spread their wings. And so, too, you are meant to live. Not in constant exhaustion, but in trust. God sees your struggle. He knows the weight on your heart. He knows the nights you have spent wondering if things will ever change, if the breakthrough will ever come. And He is not far away, watching from a distance. He is within you, beside you, holding you even when you do not feel it. And in time, you will see this exhaustion is not the end of you. It is simply the threshold of something new, a doorway into deeper faith, deeper trust, and deeper rest. So let go, breathe, stop trying to force what is already unfolding. There is a rhythm to life, a divine timing that is beyond your understanding. The same God who set the stars in place, who tells the sun when to rise and the waves when to retreat, has not forgotten you. He hears you, He sees you, and in the silence, in the waiting, He is working all things together for your good. The soul often longs for certainty, for a sign, for some undeniable proof that God is near and that the struggle will not last forever. But the nature of faith is not found in seeing, it is found in trusting, even in the absence of clarity. It is in these moments, when you are tired and weary, that faith is truly refined, not when things are easy, but when you are called to believe even when nothing makes sense. You may feel like you are stumbling in the dark, but what if the darkness is not the absence of God, but the place where He is teaching you to rely on Him alone? God does not waste pain. Every trial, every season of exhaustion, every unanswered prayer is not a sign of abandonment, but an invitation to lean in, to go deeper. The mind wants immediate relief, a quick solution, an escape from difficulty, but the soul knows that true transformation happens in the waiting. Have you ever noticed how the night is always darkest before the dawn? How the seed must remain buried before it can break through? How a storm must pass before the sky clears? The same principle applies to your life. What you feel now is not permanent. The exhaustion, the struggle, the waiting, it is not your final destination. There will come a day when you will look back on this moment and understand why it had to happen the way it did. You will see how every delay, every obstacle, every moment of weariness was leading you to something greater, something you could not yet comprehend. But for now, you are asked to trust. Not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. God does not hear you because you pray with perfect words. He does not answer because you have done everything right. He hears you because He is love, because His nature is to care for you, to walk with you, to strengthen you, even when you feel like you cannot take another step. Your heart speaks a language that God understands beyond words, your tears, your sighs, the quiet longing that you cannot even express. Nothing is hidden from Him. And because He hears you, you can rest in the assurance that He is working, even when you do not see the evidence yet. But the greatest challenge is letting go. The mind wants to hold on, to control, to figure everything out, but the Spirit knows that real peace is found in release. What if your exhaustion is not a sign that you need to try harder, but a signal that you need to surrender? What if you are not meant to keep pushing, but to finally rest in the truth that God is already carrying you? Look at the world around you. The rivers do not struggle to reach the ocean, they simply flow. The birds do not question the air beneath their wings, they simply trust. The trees do not force their branches to grow, they simply stretch toward the light. You were never meant to live in constant striving. Your soul was made to trust, to release, to exist in the rhythm of divine grace. And so, in this moment, let yourself breathe. Release the need to figure it all out. Let go of the fear that things will never change. God sees you. He knows you. He understands the depth of your exhaustion, the weight you carry, the prayers you whisper in the dark, and He is not absent. He is with you now, in this very breath, in this very heartbeat. You do not have to do this alone. You never have. Let yourself be held. Let yourself rest. The same God who holds the universe together is holding you now, and He will not let you fall. There is something profoundly human about reaching the edge of your strength, about coming to a place where you have nothing left to give. It is in these moments, when exhaustion wraps itself around you, when prayers feel unanswered, when the weight of it all seems too much, that you are met with a choice. Do you keep striving, keep fighting, keep pushing against the current, or do you surrender not in defeat, but in trust? God knows you are tired. He knows the nights you have lain awake waiting for an answer. He knows the silent battles you fight, the heaviness in your heart, the questions that go unspoken. And yet even in your weariness, He is there. He is not waiting for you to be stronger, to have more faith, to figure it all out. He is with you in the weakness, in the doubt, in the waiting. There has never been a moment when He was not holding you, even when you could not feel it. But exhaustion has a way of blinding us. It makes the road ahead seem endless, the burden unbearable. It whispers lies, telling you that nothing will ever change, that you are alone in this, that maybe God has forgotten. But if you could step outside of this moment, if you could see your life from a higher view, you would know that none of this is wasted. Every struggle, every delay, every tear is shaping something within you, something stronger, something deeper. The wind does not need permission to blow, and yet it moves. The waves do not fight to reach the shore, and yet they arrive. The sun does not question whether it will rise, and yet every morning it appears, faithful as ever. So why do you believe that you must carry this alone? Why do you believe that God, who has orchestrated the stars, who holds the universe in balance, would somehow forget to take care of you? It is easy to think that your prayers must be loud, that your faith must be unwavering, that you must prove yourself worthy of God's help, but that has never been the way of grace. God does not wait for you to be perfect before He steps in. He does not require you to have all the answers before He moves. He hears you in the silence, in the sighs, in the moments when all you can do is whisper, "Lord, I am tired," and that is enough. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is not in doing more, but in resting in what already is, in trusting that you are already held, already known, already loved beyond measure. The soul does not need to force itself into God's presence. It is already there. The struggle, then, is not about earning His love or proving your faithfulness. It is about remembering, even in the midst of exhaustion, that you are never alone. So let yourself release. Let yourself trust. The path ahead may be uncertain, but it is not unknown to God. You may feel weary, but you are not abandoned. There is a peace waiting for you, not in the distant future, not when everything is fixed, but right here, right now. It is found in surrender, in knowing that you are not expected to have all the answers, that you do not have to carry this alone, that you are held by hands far greater than your own. God sees your struggle. He knows you are tired, but He also knows that this is not where your story ends. There is more ahead. More healing, more joy, more renewal than you can imagine. And when the time is right, when you are ready, you will see it. Until then, rest in the truth that you are not forgotten, that you are deeply loved, that even now, in the waiting, in the weariness, You are exactly where you are meant to be. There comes a point when the weight of life feels unbearable, when the waiting seems endless, and the silence of heaven feels deafening. You have prayed, you have hoped, you have done everything you know to do, and still the struggle remains. The exhaustion is not just physical, it is in your soul, in the quiet corners of your heart where the questions linger. And yet even in this place, even in your deepest weariness, you are not unseen. You are not forgotten. God sees you. He knows the burdens you carry, the silent battles no one else knows about. He knows how hard you've been trying, how much you've been holding on, how desperately you've been waiting for relief. And even though it feels like nothing is changing, even though it seems like your prayers are met with silence, He is moving in ways you cannot yet see. The struggle is not evidence of His absence. It is the place where He is shaping something deeper within you. But exhaustion has a way of making us forget. It convinces us that we are alone, that perhaps we are not strong enough, not faithful enough, not worthy enough. But this is not the truth. The truth is that you were never meant to carry this alone. The truth is that God is not asking you to figure everything out, to force your way through, or to keep pushing beyond what you can bear. He is asking you to trust, to rest, to let go of the idea that you must do it all on your own. Have you ever watched the ocean waves? They do not struggle to move. They are carried by something greater, something unseen. The same is true for you. There is a current of grace beneath you, holding you, guiding you, leading you, even when you cannot see the way. The exhaustion you feel is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you need to surrender, to stop resisting the flow, to stop trying to control what was never meant to be controlled. God does not need you to be stronger than you are. He does not need you to have more faith, more answers, more certainty. He simply wants you to come as you are, even in your exhaustion, even in your doubts. His love is not dependent on your ability to hold it all together. He sees your struggle, and He hears the quiet cry of your heart, the prayers you can't even put into words. And He is not distant. He is not waiting for you to fix yourself before He steps in. He is already here, already working, already carrying you in ways you do not even realize. But the question is, will you let go? Will you release the fear, the worry, the need to have everything under control? Will you trust that even in the unknown, even in the waiting, God is still leading you? That He is making a way where there seems to be no way? That your exhaustion is not the end of you, but the beginning of something new? There will come a day when you will look back on this season and see the purpose in it. You will see how God was moving, even in the silence, how He was strengthening you, preparing you, growing something within you that could only come through the waiting. But for now, in this moment, He simply asks you to rest, to breathe, to remember that you are not alone. God sees your struggle. He knows you are tired, but He also knows the plans He has for you, plans for hope, for renewal, for joy beyond what you can imagine. This is not the end. You are still in the process of becoming, still being led to something greater, and when the time is right, you will see it. Until then, let yourself rest in the truth that you are deeply loved, that you are held, and that you are never alone. End of poem. This reading is by Andy Liven.